Master Beta. You know, I enjoy a good pun, but what I love even more, double entendres. Hello everyone, Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. The fourth episode of Pam Tommy is out called The Master Beta. Also, can be flipped to say one whole word, the masturbator, which sort of is fitting the way that this episode opens. It opens sort of as looking at the operations of what Rand is sort of created with the delivery of these tapes. So that it doesn't come straight to him. He has the website, they take the orders in Canada. Canada then faxes those names and addresses to Rand, and Rand then delivers them through a shipping company, and it sort of just keeps that going. In his mind, he thinks he's keeping it anonymous and off the books, which folks nowadays know how the internet works and how tracing and all that stuff works, that he's not leaving himself any type of a leeway. But we can see how it is all done, and then it sort of ends the montage with a man getting the tape after going through the process of sending a check, having that check processed and sent to him, and with tissue and paper in you know what he's doing next. It is both an interesting way to do it and in sort of a disgusting way as well, because at the end of the day, like, this episode really hits home that Pamela is the biggest victim of all of this, as there's a lot of people who don't have as much skin in the game as she does when this all comes out. So what we get in this episode is Pam and Tommy, as we saw at the end, they're pregnant. So they go to the doctors and get everything checked out and see that they're pregnant, their first sonogram photo, and that photo means a lot to them. And so they originally put it on the fridge. That's not a safe spot for it. You don't want to put that on the fridge. So Tommy goes to go try to put it in the safe, which is then when he realizes that the safe is gone. They call the police and start reporting everything that's missing. It's all the guns, all the rings, all that stuff, cash, all that stuff. And it is lost on him. He does not remember, but Pam remembers the tape that's in there. And Tommy's like, oh yeah, we'll get that back. He's very flippant about the way that this tape doesn't mean that much, and we'll get it back. And he goes to tell the cops. He sort of berates the cops. He becomes a dick again to the cops, to the point where the cops probably were like, we were going to help you out, but now F you. You don't pay our tax dollars, even though you scream from the rooftops that you do. And so because they have sort of messed up that game, they hire a PI. The PI gets immediately to it because there's a sequence where Pam and Tommy are sort of having a conversation. He's like, hey, who have you pissed off? And he goes down the litany of all the celebrities, Bret Michaels, John Stamos for some reason. And it doesn't dawn on him until the PI puts two and two together. It's like, hey, these people knew your security system, and they took out your security camera. Who would know that? And he goes down the rabbit hole saying, hey, yo, Rand established that, and he did this. It's like, oh yeah, and I got rid of him. I smoked him, put a gun to his head. I didn't pay him. And Pam's like, wait, you didn't pay him? More things that, like, if he had just handled this, we may not have been in the situation we are, but that's neither here nor there. But she starts to realize, like, hey, you're being sort of addicted to this guy. He now has a reason to sort of come back at us. Not a real reason, but there's something that could lead to this impetus. He then tells him, the PI, like, hey, he came back to get his tools, and I told him, nah, he can't get them tools. And she's like, no, of course we gave him the tools back. And Tom's like, nah, why would I give him the tools back? It is clearly a different way of someone who is very humane about all of it, and someone who's like, I'm going to be addicted to this guy because I can't be, because I have the upper hand. Immediately, the PI knows that that's Rand, so he goes to Rand and kind of roughs him up a little bit, but he can't find the tape. What's interesting to me to this is that at this point in time in life, Pam seems to be aware of how quickly this can spread, but these folks don't seem to know how fast this tape can kind of spread like wildfire. And so you have one copy that gets sent to someone. She even brings up, like, hey, what if somebody else sends this or copies this or brings this to someone else? This can get out really quickly. And so that's sort of what happens here. What happens then is that Rand sort of tries to close up rank. He goes and runs to Milty's studio to say, hey, yo, they're on to us. They know it's me. And at the studio, he's seeing that Milty has already sort of expanded the operation and now is letting more people in on it than that should have been in on it. Rand finds out that, like, this tape is being sold bootleg and a Tower Records place that isn't being done by him. He's not making the profits of it. They're making like a 2-for-1 deal for it, 1 for like they're selling it. Someone's copied it and mass producing it. He no longer has the complete control of it. So it's funny that what he thought was going to be a super small, quiet operation where he can make some money has now sort of ballooned out, and it's all coming back down to him. And so he sort of has to close up rank and shit because people are coming after him. Meanwhile, Pamela is starting to feel the brunt of this. As it starts to spread like wildfire, Tommy has sort of reassured her that no one's going to see this tapes. We're going to get it. The PI's on it. We got it. He's very calm and collected about it. And then she shows up to set for Baywatch once, and she just starts hearing the noises and sounds that she made on that tape while she's walking to set. And that's a painful sequence because she starts knowing what's happening. And she's walking to a trailer where cameramen and grips and whatnot are all watching the tape. Some of them start scurrying off. They look very ashamed once she sees it, and that just shows you how there's a bit of a disconnect between making a caricature of Pamela and Tommy and making them this bigger than life thing, and then when you see the human person in front of them, they felt bad when she was there in the moment, but they did not feel bad when they started the tape and began to watch it while at the workplace that she works at. That is both disgusting and terrible. She grabs the tape, takes it out, and then she goes to the session with Motley Crue where Tommy's there, clears everybody out, and kind of is like, hey, we need to talk. The tape is out. He's selling the tape. And Tommy doesn't show too much concern, but she's freaking out. Her name's on it. She's not even that she's the bigger star, it's that she's the woman of the two. And it is going to be looked at, she even says this so much in a scene later, but it's going to be looked at differently for a woman in this situation. She's going to seem like the scarlet letter, the slut, and where all he's going to be like, high five, you're the good guy, way to bag Pamela. So he doesn't seem to have as much onus as she does. They go to because they on the back of the tape that they have, it shows the internet, and they kind of then see that this is an entire operation and that they're selling it from here so they wipe them off. So to keep them off the trail. So in addition to the PI, Tommy then hires or sort of invests a biker gang to sort of collect to get Rand and collect things, and they start roughing up posting. Thing is, they don't know what Rand looks like, so they start attacking, attacking anybody who happens to be around tapes. They're just closing up ranks. So he's got the PI and the biker gang going after Rand and Milty because they now know through the PI that they went as a duo to every porn company in town to try to sell this, and they just couldn't. Milty seems to be distancing himself from the operation. He's getting high and kind of pushing back. He knows that Rand has sort of brought this heat down on him. He's like, cool, I'm going to go away. And Rand is sort of now in this a month. So we get a lot of cat and mouse where like he's at a place, they show up, he leaves. It almost happens a little bit too much. It's one of those ones where I'm like, I get the point. But I think it happens like 3 times in this. Like, all right, guys, we get it. He's on the run. We don't need to see each and every one of these. We know that he's closing up ranks, trying to close up operations. People are sort of abandoning him and leaving him to his own devices. The sweet spot, again, for me, is not anything with Rand. I don't really care about that character because he's the villain, he's the dick of all of this. It's the Pamela of it all. So we have a pretty great sequence in their bedroom when Tommy is on the phone with the PI, and the PI is like, yeah, we'll get the tape, we'll get it. But he's not showing her the fervor or attention or care that he thinks he should be putting towards this. He seems very nonchalant, and she gets on the phone and is like, hey, I need this, we need to do this, and they go back and forth, and Tommy's like, I don't understand, I'm on that tape too, like, I don't understand why you're having such a problem with it. I want this bag as much as you. And she's like, no, you don't. And he thinks it's because she's the bigger star, which she is at this point in time, but that has nothing to do with the star power. It's like I said earlier, what she said in this sequence is, she's a woman. They're going to look at her very differently than they are going to be him. And then he says something that it's funny. At the time of this coming out, I heard this said a lot in reference to this. Because Pamela Anderson, at this point, had already been in Playboy and been nude in magazines and so forth. He says, I don't know what the big deal is. People have seen this. It's not like they haven't seen it anyway. which she got really upset and angry and told him to get out the room. It is at that point where you kind of realize, oh yeah, Tommy really is a dick. Like, yeah, he's in this and he's probably in love with her, but you don't say anything like that to someone you care about. Because here's the thing, and for those Playboy shoots and all the new modeling she had done, she owned the onus of that. She made the choice to do that. That was her own right. With the sex tape that has now been leaked, that was something that was private, that she made the right to make the tape. She did not choose to have that distributed all over the place. And so for him to not really be able to see the difference in what those are, and it's sex acts as opposed to being naked, you're naked and doing sexual activities. It's just, they're two completely different things that she should not have had to explain at that point in time, but much less explain to her husband. In this, between the stress of probably this going on and like her always doing this and just natural, whatever the human body does, her pregnancy is miscarried. She loses her kid, and Tommy's therefore they've sort of reconciled a little bit, but the paparazzi is starting to swarm in on them between the sex tape and what they kind of see them at the doctors all the time. They start to swarm in a little bit more, and the end of the episode ends with Pamela sort of freaking out, and she's, I mean, between her life falling apart, her losing her kid, and her husband not really being there the way that she feels he should be, and for there being the reason that all of this occurs. A paparazzi person pulls up on someone to take photos, and she snaps. She takes the brace that she had at the hospital and starts beating the window, sort of her cathartic moment to release some type of anger, to lash out at someone, because she's not lashing out at Tommy, even though she really wants to. And there's no real pinpoint person to lash out with the tape, because it has now become this bigger than life thing. It is sort of showing you how much this starts to weigh in on her, and it makes how this series began with the awkward and weird Jay Leno interview when he's touching on her, trying to get that and saying, like, what about the sex tape? It makes that feel even worse and more grimy, because you see all the realness to it. And I think that's what this series is doing so well, is, yeah, we're making a caricature of Rand, and I don't believe a lot of the stuff, because a lot of this is coming from his viewpoint. In his story that he wrote, and Tommy is sort of the dick, but Pamela is the heart of this, and we're seeing how poorly we are as a society in treating victims of this. And at that point in time, she was the butt of the joke. She was the laughing punchline of all this, and she's wrong. Not wrong. Her monologue that she has in this that is given to her. And yes, some of it might be too on the note, but it is true. Like, we looked at her very differently than we looked at Tommy. Tommy probably, after a while, he went to conquest and jumped onto the next woman. But this sort of lived in infamy with Pam all the time, and that sucks. That's not good. So this series is sort of shaping up like I did with the Monica Lewinsky one, where we sort of start seeing those names or those caricatures that sort of become the punchlines or the buzz of jokes get a little bit more humanity to them, so you can sort of understand them a little bit more and sort of hopefully take your foot off their neck and kind of ease up off of ha 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 pointing and laughing at them. This is obviously going to spread even more. She's going to have to start talking about this in public, which I think is where this series is going to get even more disgusting. When Pamela has to start having conversations about this while she's doing press tour for Barbed Wire or doing all of this stuff, like, that's where this gets grimy. But we're also going to get into if Rand is closing up operations, that means he's not made enough money to pay back the mob. So he's going to have the mob, he's going to have the bikers, and he's going to have the PI coming after him. And eventually Tommy's probably going to try to get his hands on him too. Just to show face for Pam. I don't think it means as much to him, but he's going to try and believe, or get her to believe, that he is on her side. Because at the end of the day, we do know that they stay together for this. Like, while they have lost this kid, we do know that they have had 2 kids together, just with history. So there is a lot more to sort of dive into here, but I think we're getting into the nuts and bolts of what sort of broke Pam, and which sucks, because she's trying to take so much onus for herself at the end of the last episode, the Jane Fonda one, where she has that moment like, I want to do this, I want to be a part of this, I want to be sexual, I want to be this, and all of that is taken away from her in this episode because of something she has no control over. But those are my thoughts. What did you guys think about this latest episode, the Master Beta? You can slip up and get that wrong real quick until it becomes a completely different show, although still fitting. Leave your comments and thoughts below. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast by the same name. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.